everyone. This is the biggest Zoom meeting we've ever had, so I'm glad that Dr. Pfeffer brings in so many people. He's a wonderful speaker, and we'll talk to him in just one moment. Thanks for taking time out of your Saturday to join us. I'm Elizabeth Ouellette. I'm on the board of directors of the CMTA and full-time volunteer. And on the screen, who's helping us out today is Laurel Richardson. She is the Director of Community Outreach. Did I get that right?
Yes.
You know, I get confused with Laurel's title because she does so much within the CMTA. She does a little bit of everything. So she's also the director of this and that, but her title is the Director of Community Outreach. And we also have Johan Bouchard on, and he's our Manager of Donor Relations, and he's here as a co-host. And our big guest is Dr. Glenn Pfeffer. And welcome, Glenn. Thank you so much for coming on today. So before we get started, I just want to tell everybody that Dr. Pfeffer is the director of the Foot and Ankle program, surgical program at Cedars-Sinai. And he is, I can't tell you how much I appreciate and admire Dr. Pfeffer. He spends all his time with people with CMT. He wants to better their lives. He wants to see people walk. He has devoted so much time and energy to the CMT community. I am just so honored to have him here as a doctor, my son's surgeon, as a friend, and as a colleague. So welcome, Dr. Pfeffer, and thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm surprised so many people came on a Saturday.
Oh, to see you, they're coming out of the woodwork, everyone. And we will have this, we are recording this webinar, this Zoom meeting, so you'll be able to see it later on if you want to review some of the concepts. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the foot and the tendons and the heel and surgery, I wanted to get to know Dr. Pfeffer a little bit more. And you know what, I was doing some research on him. I saw that he did magic. And I'm like, what? What surgeon does magic? And I was wondering, Glenn, Dr. Pfeffer or Glenn, I kind of call you both, if you could show me a magic trick. I don't want to put you on the spot, well, but I thought maybe.
Yeah, Elizabeth asked me this before, and I was worried about it, but I decided to do something. And I'll tell you why actually magic is important to me. I did this through high school, college, medical school. I actually performed in nightclubs. I spent the summer in Nantucket at the Rose and Crown as their magician. And whatever it is that attracted me and still attracts me to magic is the exact same feeling I get 2 weeks after surgery when a CMT patient is sitting in the office.
Yeah.
Your foot's going to be a little bloody. You're going to have some sutures to take out. And we open up the cast, and you'll see some pictures of this. And I hold their foot, and I say, take a look here at your foot. And it's a new foot. It's a foot they haven't seen perhaps forever. And the look on their face is identical to the look on people's faces when you do a magic trick for them. So whatever that is that attracts me is why I continue with magic. Magic is very simple. You know, you can do things like this, where you can take it and have it disappear. You can make it a little more complicated, which I do in the office for kids. You just take the same little piece of foam and you just put it into this hand, and you can just show people that it's empty, and you can smooth again, and there it is again. So that's sleight of hand, which of course is great for the magician. I still do this at orthopedic parties, but not to belabor it. If I were going to do this, I wanted this to have the same absolutely startling response that people have with CMT when they see their new foot. So I've enlisted the help of my wife, Mandy. It was a little begrudging at first. We'll finish up here quickly with this, and all I need is a carrot. And Mandy, come on over. Now, we haven't practiced this at all on Zoom. I haven't done this for a while.
Hi, Mandy.
I haven't done this for a while. This is Johan, my buddy down here, and everyone else. Hi, everyone. So forgive me, and if it doesn't work, well, keep in mind I'm not a professional magician. All right.
I hope you're not cutting her in half.
This is a surgical device in a way. It's what they call an arm chopper. It's really, we use it in magic, but when I give shows to the residents and other orthopedic surgeons, you can see how it helps me bond with the audience. So I just want to show you this. Mandy's going to help. This is a carrot, and we're going to put it in the bottom. So you can see the carrot here. Watch the bottom closely. That's coming really close so you can see what's happening to the bottom of the carrot. Watch carefully. Cuts right through it. You can see that. All right, so what I want to do now is I want you to take, let's see, let me how you do this. Take your hand, if you wouldn't mind, and put it through.
I guess I'll put my left hand through.
We haven't done this before. Exactly, I hope this is right. And we're going to keep the carrot through here.
Oh boy.
I want you to watch. This is really an illusion. This is obviously not really happening, but let's try it carefully. Watch the carrot. Ah! Wow. So, this is a guy doing my arm.
Thank you.
I'm a little tanned as we just got back from our anniversary trip up to the beach for a few nights. Anyway, I'm sorry to go on with that, but I wanted to show you.
No, I am so excited. Thank you so much. You can do a whole, we'll do another Zoom meeting on magic tricks.
I can do a whole show for you if you want.
So Dr. Pfeffer, thank you so much. Your father was a surgeon?
He was a general surgeon. Yeah.
Oh, and so is that what got you into the surgical mode or the surgical background?
No, absolutely. I don't think I'd ever have even gone into medicine if not for my dad's influence. You know, like all of us, I'm a mix of my dad's DNA and my mom's, and they were very different people. But Dad really inspired me with his surgery, and he was hardworking, and I think it was my destiny. I probably had very little free choice in life. In turn, he didn't make me, but in terms of who I was, it was sort of my destiny, like the Jedi there.
So you're such an interesting person. You horseback ride, or you did in the past. You scuba dive. You dance. You create bonsai. And could you tell me, I thought that was so interesting, and I read somewhere where you made a correlation between bonsai trees and surgery. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. You know, for those out there who are older rather than younger, not old, but older, I think when you look back on your lives, it starts to congeal in a way. And what seems so interrelated at first becomes one. And that, of course, that one is who you are. And I've always been interested in bonsai, which are, you know, you take their plants, they're trees, and you keep them miniature by trimming their leaves, by trimming their roots, and you keep them in small pots. Everyone knows what they are. And what you do to shape them is you wire the branches, and you hold them down and put them so that they look like a tree. And I realized only a year ago that what I'm doing with bonsai is identical to what I'm doing with CMT feet. I was sitting there in surgery, and we were wiring a foot down and putting screw into it. And somebody who knew about bonsai said, you know, Glenn, that's exactly what you're doing with bonsai. And it was startling to me. You'd think it would be obvious, but it wasn't. So the magic, the bonsai, as you may know, I've got my own foot problem.
I was just about to ask you, you have several now, but yes. And how does that help you relate? Of course, when you told me you had foot issues, I'm like, he gets it. He knows what it is like to have a foot problem. And I think that's so interesting for the patient.
Well, I was just going to say, Elizabeth, that's how I got into horseback riding, because I'm athletic by nature, but I couldn't run. You know, I didn't know what I had. It's very poignant for me, the CMT world, because patient after patient, everyone who's listening knows this, everyone. Unless you had a mother or father who had CMT, you grew up not quite knowing what was wrong with you, right? And I didn't either. I didn't know I had a problem with my foot for 40 years. It sounds dumb, right? But if someone's out there who has CMT and no one told them they had CMT for 40 years, and they just thought they walked funny and they couldn't keep up and they were a little kind of, you know, imbalanced, nobody would know. So I took up horseback riding because I could do what I wanted to do. I could fly through the air and jump, and, you know, and I'm sure all the people listening to have modified their lives in their way so that they can function with their CMT. You know, you asked me a question though I forgot about. What was it exactly about?
No, I think I just said you could really relate to the person with CMT and understand foot issues and the inability to do certain things.
Well, there's no question. You know, I don't like even to talk about it too much because you don't want to get all corny on a Zoom chat with all these people. But it's you know, yes, I 100% relate what people are going through. I'm not in a wheelchair. I don't have problems breathing. My hands are strong. But for the isolation that somebody feels, the difference that somebody feels growing up with CMT is exactly what I felt, for sure. And I don't know that you can teach somebody that, really. I'm not sure you can really learn it, but it's just in my soul. I'm not as bad off as most of the people with CMT at all, but boy, I get it, you know. That's why, I think that's probably why I was attracted to all this.
So why don't we start your presentation? I think you are a fascinating person, and I know you're an expert surgeon and the best of the best. And you're also a great presenter. So I'm sure people want to hear what you do on a daily basis.
All right, well, let's see if this is going to work.
So Glenn, you'll have to start again, Dr. Pfeffer, with the share your screen and then choosing the box. We put you back on speaker view so everyone can see you. There you go.
Now, does that show? Oh, that's the wrong thing though.
Yeah, you'll want to go to your first slide and then put it in present slideshow.
There. Does that work?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
This is a miracle too.
It is, isn't it?
Reading this is just like that 2-week post-op visit. Oh my God, the surgery worked. Okay, so let's start. And let me see, just cut me off here if I get too long. But we'll go through this quickly. I want to just show you my world of CMT. And I won't, I have a certain kind of person comes to me, right? Somebody who was unfortunately paralyzed in a wheelchair would not be getting to my office. So I do understand that I'm seeing a segment of the CMT population. But this is my world and that I go through every single day. At this point, I'm confident that we or I at Cedars operate on more CMT patients than anywhere else in the United States, and we have a very big experience with it. Okay, so let's see if this works. It's not advancing, so I should do it from here. Okay, so that's me. And we're lucky enough to have a large CMT program at Cedars with some of the most famous CMT neurologists on the face of the planet. And, you know, Rich Lewis, Bob Balla, and you know, geneticists. And it's just great. If you have an issue and you can come to see the program, you'll see a lot of people. Instagram is as alien to me as, you know, speaking Russian or French. And yet it's been a tremendous success for me and the people who follow it. I mean, my gosh, I didn't even understand that I'd have 2 people following it. Now we have close to 1,400 people across the world. And I communicate with them all. It's sad when someone from Ethiopia says, how can I come and have surgery? And of course, the chance of them having surgery is almost zero for financial reasons, travel reasons. But I'd encourage you to go to this Instagram site. That's what it is, Charcot-Marie-Tooth surgery. Having a group like this, being part of the CMTA, I think is what it's all about when you have any condition that's not common. Why can't I have to go here to, okay, good. So I want to show you very quickly. The foot's complicated, right? It's got a lot of muscles in it. There are 20 muscles in the foot, you know, more than there are in the entire leg. This is an important one. This is the right foot you're looking at. It's the tibialis anterior. That's what lifts up the foot. Here's another one. These are the toe extensors. These are what lift up your toes. And interestingly, with CMT, if the a tibialis anterior that lifts your ankle gets weak, these toe extensors will start working harder, which is why so many of you will have a toe deformity. This is a right foot from the back. This is one of the key muscles that weakens in CMT. It's why it happens exactly is unknown. But this muscle, when it weakens, it destabilizes the ankle. And that's why part of the reason the foot starts to turn in, this muscle is weak. And the other reason the foot starts to turn in so commonly is because this muscle, this is the right foot looking from behind, stays strong. So one weak muscle, one strong muscle, it starts to deform. What would happen to your wrist if these muscles were weak and these muscles were strong? This is what would happen. And then eventually, first you could go like this, and eventually you'd never be able to even move your wrist again because it would become locked in position. So let's talk about that. What causes the CMT deformity that I'm talking about? I'm not talking too much today about the paralyzed foot. I'm talking about this common cavovarus foot. Johan, why won't it advance? I guess I have to just go down to this arrow down here each time. Okay, so this is what it is. This is what happens every millisecond in our body. Muscles are pulling back and forth, but keeping us balanced, right? With CMT, because of the paralysis that's uneven, involving some muscles, but not other muscles, it becomes weak. There's CMT. Some muscles are powerfully strong, and others are weak, and that causes a deformity. It's called a cavovarus, and you can really see it on this left foot. Do you see my pointer there when I do it, Laurel?
Yes.
Yep.
So you could see that here. So, and that's mild. These are a brother and a sister from Eureka, and it was more severe. And the longer you leave it, the more severe it becomes, and most importantly, the more stiff it comes. Take your hand, don't do this, but take your hand and put it in your pocket and leave it there for a year. Come out, you know what's going to happen? Not only are you not going to be able to move it, you'll probably never be able to open it up again because all of the soft tissue tracks. And that's what you don't want to have happen. If there's any message I can give you, don't let that happen. This is a high arched foot. Can you see this here? This is a CMT foot. There's a crack right there. And that crack in this bone with this very high arch, the heels turn, here it comes. Do you see the pointer? That's a crack in the bone. And that's because the person's been walking on this CMT stiff foot for so long they actually cracked through the bone. They didn't know it. They didn't know they had CMT. This woman came to me, she was Scandinavian. She said, I have a crack in my bone, and then we figured out why. Now, let me make it 100% clear. The minority of patients, I think, benefit from surgery with CMT. Let me go back on that. You really don't, most patients do not need surgery. In the most severe cases, when you're paralyzed below the knee and the foot's flaccid, take a look at this. This gal has she has good balance, but she has no function below the knee. Look how well she does in braces. She had to hold onto a wall to walk, right? So this is incredible. And what these braces are, do you see the video here?
Yes.
These are called ground reaction force braces. Do you see how when this person bends forward, the piece of carbon fiber or plastic actually bends and stores energy? So when you have no function in the leg and the Achilles tendon isn't working, nothing. These are just terrific braces. This person could walk 100 miles if they had to, because their foot's flat on the ground and they're doing great. Now here are all the types of braces there are. Some are off the shelf, some are custom made. Which is better than the other? I don't know. I think absolutely chocolate ice cream is the best. Does anyone disagree? I bet somebody likes strawberry or maybe vanilla. And the problem with the braces is you can't try them all on unless you go to a spectacular brace shop, which I'm lucky enough to work with in our CMT center. Would anybody say that a size 6 dress of a certain brand is perfect for you? Of course not. You'd want to at least get it in the mail, try it on, and send it back. That's what you have to be able to do with braces. If you come in and someone says, well, the noodle is for you, tricky, right? Unfortunately, we can't try all these braces, and some of them cost thousands of dollars. So try to go to a brace shop that has a wide selection and can let you try some of them off the shelf. Now let's see next. I've got to bring my arrow down, which is not advancing there. Okay. Now, what is not right for a brace is this crooked foot. Some of you have it. I see this every day of the week. Would anyone put a foot like this into a brace? It's like putting a square peg into a round hole. This is from Friday. I was a little delayed today in getting my talk all set because this gal just came in. She lives on a ranch. That's the shape of her foot. That's the shape of her brace. Shame on everyone taking care of her. Shame on her brace maker. Pain walking on the side of her foot in a brace that looks like it's something to cage up an animal. That foot should never be allowed to walk the face of the earth. That can be made flat, and even if this woman can't get out of a brace, she can get into a brace with her foot balanced and her body weight plumb line with no pressure walking on the side of the foot. I can't see you all, but how many of you have had or have a callus on the side of your foot, right? So that's what happens. So these people should all have surgery that's how I feel. Now, some people don't want to wear a brace.
Hi, my name is Katie. I live in Florida and I have CMT.
Katie didn't want to wear a
When I
brace.
was in 6th grade, I first started getting made fun of for the way that I walked and noticed that running and keeping up with my friends was becoming more difficult for me. And my parents started taking me to some doctors to try to find out what I could do to help me with my CMT. And with each doctor that I met with, I really felt like they didn't understand my specific case of CMT. And they gave me some options like braces and orthotics. And some of them would help me temporarily, but nothing ever really helped me. So when I was in high school, I started falling almost regularly. And I missed out on my homecoming and my prom, and just gave up on trying to find shoes that fit and started to become really discouraged.
So Katie was a young woman, obviously, and she didn't want to wear braces. She could have actually been in a brace. So she came from Florida and she said, I don't want to wear braces the rest of my life. So I said, okay. And she had some muscles that were working. We operated on one foot, incredibly brave. We operated on another. Katie could hardly walk without a brace, without holding onto a wall. Okay, so and many of you know that kind of person. So the CMT type foot deformity is a tricky surgery. That's the problem, right? People have had a lot of issues with it. There are so many components to CMT surgery. It's not, the surgeries will take 3 to 4.5 hours. There's no way to get through it quickly. Basically, the failure of CMT surgery is when we don't do enough. Right? So this is what we put on the operative board at Cedars-Sinai. We put all the procedures someone's going to have. This person basically had 18 operations. Any one of these operations is a surgery. Hi, we're going to fuse a part of your toe joint. You'd say to a patient, okay, let's schedule you for surgery. Hi, we're going to do a tendon transfer in you. Okay, let's schedule you for surgery. But 3 tendon transfers, 18 surgeries. It's probably, I was asking the residents, the most complicated extensive surgery that there is in all of orthopedics, except for some spine surgery, hip surgeries with dislocations and acetabular malformations. Now, how do we know what to do? Well, the problem is there is no good consensus on what to do, at least there hasn't been. But we've done a lot of studies on this at Cedars. Much thanks to the CMTA for their help. This was a study we did. It was published in 2018. It was sponsored by the Charcot-Marie-Tooth CMTA. And this was really incredible for us because we won a prize for this operation, telling us how to correct the heel best. And we won a prize for this as one of 3 research studies of the year most likely to change orthopedics. Now, why that happened is because it was a novel study. It was done very well. But it happened really because this is so poorly understood, right? If we were dealing with a study on how to do a better total hip, it never won the prize. I just happen to have it here. I don't think you can really see, but this is how we did this study. This is a print of Sarah's foot, a young woman with CMT, who you'll actually see later. And we printed out 18 series, 18 of these, and then we studied them with different operations in the lab, but very exactly. And we showed which was actually the best operations for correcting heel deformities in CMT patients with her type of problem. Since then, we've done other research, more on heel osteotomies. We've looked at extensor transfers. We've been very fortunate. I don't know the word to use yet. Our team's good at what they do, but we won a prize for this at the most difficult competitive organization in the world, the most academic, the Orthopedic Research Society. And Max, who's going to be joining us, he's second author, won a prize here just this past spring for a Young Investigators Prize. I mean, this is like winning a Nobel Prize in orthopedics, and I was actually stunned by it. But part of the reason is because the whole area of CMT surgery is so poorly investigated. It's not that hard to do some landmark work if you do it, if you do the research. Now, there's a big hole still on how you should do CMT surgery and how it ends up in people and how do people do. And we're just starting now. Some of you who I've operated on, hi, I hope you're doing well, but we're going to be contacting you and asking you to go online and fill out some data to see how you're doing. I always say I'm a pretty accessible guy, and I don't hear about too many people doing poorly. I know the ones I've had to reoperate on. I just spoke to a woman this morning where a young girl in New York is not having the motor strength that she needs. So I think I have a sense of it, but we're going to study it and hopefully publish that by the end of the year. So this was a remarkable thing. Years in planning. These are 7 past presidents of the American Orthopedic Foot and Ankle Society and some of the most famous foot and ankle surgeons on the face of the planet. And with the sponsor, the CMTA sponsorship, and Elizabeth's fire in her belly, and Laurel's fire in her belly, we brought these people together, and it almost killed me, literally, but we finally published a paper on our results, which just came out. And this is a consensus. We didn't get everyone to agree, but I think just to sum it up here, this is accessible. You can get it through the CMTA and in other places. And if you're going to have surgery locally in your area, you can't come to Los Angeles for some reason, give this to your surgeon and say, listen, I'm sure you know all about this, but would you mind taking a look at this paper? And if they haven't seen it, they'll be grateful to have it. We can talk about it briefly after, but I want to finish up. The goal of surgery is to give you a flat foot, and the goal of surgery is to balance your foot. My goal is to keep you out of a brace if I can, and I usually can if I'm willing to operate on you. It doesn't always work that way. And if we can't get you in a brace, at least out of a brace, at least we'll get you into a smaller brace, right? Much better to wear just a small piece of plastic than some of these bigger, bulky braces. So what do? We transfer tendons, which is moving muscles. We move strong muscles that are deforming the foot to weaker muscles, which are letting the foot become deformed. We cut through the bone. Here you can see a bone. This is a right heel we're looking at. We take a wedge out of the bone. We twist the heel around. Here you can see it. So this is a heel from behind on the right side. And I'm sorry about this. This arrow just keeps disappearing. And you can see what we do. We take a wedge out, and then we just simply shift the heel. Now, what I'm going to show you next, you've got to close your eyes if you're squeamish at all. I'm going to show you very detailed intraoperative pictures. The way it breaks out is 50% of the people really want to see these pictures. If you don't like seeing an operative surgery, close your eyes. I don't want to be resuscitating anybody unnecessarily. A quarter of the people go, either way, I don't want to, I could see it or not see it. A quarter of the people say, I absolutely don't want to see it. So I'm going to show a few slides, close your eyes or turn away, right? Because they're very, what do they say on NBC News? They may be disturbing to some people. Here we go. This is the research that was sponsored by the CMTA. And this is a right foot from the bottom, and we have separated the heel from the body and put special cuts into it that are not commonly done in the United States. And we can put this heel anywhere we want, because the failure of CMT surgery, by and large, is the heel's not adequately corrected. All right, so that's first. And there are other bony cuts we do, but they're better understood. Next, This is the inside of the ankle. Now, if you look here, what we've done is we've gone into the foot and we've cut 2 tendons. Why would you do that? Well, we can use those muscles and tendons much better to help lift up the ankle. Take a look what these tendons that are bending the toes doing. They're causing the toes to claw. She's weak in her extensors and tight here, so gradually these toes are clawing over. So she doesn't even want these, right? So we took these 2 tendons and we moved them up to the side of the leg. And when I see this, it's still like looking at a magic trick. When I saw the magic trick with Mandy and her arm, and the carrot breaks and it works, and I haven't hurt her, that's how I feel every time I do this. I'm just stunned how these things continue to work. Because here it is, taking and moving these tendons from one side of the foot to the other. We just bring them right through like that. And then what we do is we take them and we bring them down through the foot and take them out and plug them into the foot. So now the tendons that were deforming the foot on one side are hooked into the foot on this side, and they will lift the foot up. And it's remarkable. Now, the operation you just saw, I don't think is, this is not done much. That's period. You know, it's not like, okay, you have to come to Cedars to have me do it, but this is a rare operation. I know that. I know that from the consensus statement because people are not doing it. And I started doing this years ago. It's not common, but if any of you, all I need is one muscle to take you out of a brace, one. And some people can't do anything with their ankle, but they have toes that claw. And that's just been overlooked. And that's what we did here. And I'll show you how she did this very patient at the end. So to finish up, let's see. You can open your eyes. Sorry, that took longer. Nothing's coming. There you go. You can open your eyes up again. Hi, welcome back. Okay. Now, who can you trust to do surgery? I hear there's a lot of talk about me in chat rooms and stuff. I said, isn't there anything I ask my patients they don't like? And one person said, well, you kept them waiting a lot. And another person apparently said, well, I just didn't like him, but I guess he's a good surgeon. But look out there. I don't hear anybody saying about me anyway, oh, he sold me a bill of good. He said I'd be good, but I'm not. I just do not hear it. And if you do, tell Elizabeth and she'll tell me, because I want to hear about the failures I've had. I know the failures. I know why they've occurred. Most of them have just been in the hands of God. Perhaps 1 or 2 of them have been something that I've done weekly. Find someone who does a CMT surgery a week. It's a little bit of, forgive me, a month. That's a fair number of CMT surgeries to do. The problem is you're going to have a hard time finding that. Most very experienced, busy surgeons will be doing 3 CMT surgeries, maybe 2 a year. But if you can find people around the country, I don't really know who they are, that's a good thing. Now, remember that gal I showed you with the tendon transfer? Here she is. This is her right foot. Look at her. She can hardly move it. That's before surgery. That's how she started. All right? Barely moving. Now look. That's after surgery. That is a miracle. That is 20 carats cutting through. And I'm just stunned when I see it. I am absolutely stunned that works. Here she is not moving. The only thing that works in her foot are the flexor tendons. And I said, it's a long shot, but I've had complete success with it. And here she is moving. So it's very gratifying work. And we knew that 2 weeks after surgery. For so much surgery, you have to wait a year, you have to wait 2 years. She'll continue to improve for a year. Okay, so let's just see if we can finish up here. When should you do your surgery? Do it as soon as you know that you or your child can't live with their foot the rest of their life. The sooner the better. Dr. K, my partner, because I don't operate on people really under the age of 8, 9, he just operated on a 4-year-old yesterday from Utah. Both feet, 4 years old. All of these people are the perfect age for me to be doing surgery. 10, 11, 15, 16, but you can do it anytime. It just gets harder because things get stiffer, right? So every day, because of Instagram, I get videos like this. And I chat with people. Some people are from Eastern Europe. Some people are from the United States, most of them. But this boy can't live with what he has, can he? But here's his feet. There it is. That's why he could have surgery. That muscle's working. I tell them, you come, I guarantee you I will make you better. I don't know how much better. I'm not 100% sure I'll keep him out of a brace, But I tell people you're about a C minus. This kid's about a C minus. I'll at least get him to a B plus. And then I remember how my son did that in Spanish, and I was very pleased. And I said, we're going to do that for you too. Maybe it'll be an A, but this is not a tenable life for your son. All right. So all I need is one strong muscle. We're almost done. All I need is that muscle to move. That's it. I just need any muscle. Is there risk? Of course. You might close your eyes if you don't want to see a horrible, horrible scab. That's what it is. This is Betty Conley. I'm sure she'd be happy if I used your name, from North Carolina. She'd had multiple surgeries before I saw her, however. She couldn't walk. They lived near the beach. That was what her foot looked like after surgery. That's not a good thing. But several months later, I'm not going to put it in for time, but I get emails, texts from her. I just got something from her husband of them scampering down the beach in North Carolina. And her husband said to me, "Doctor, thank you so much for giving me my wife back." But there are problems. The biggest reason surgery fails is not enough is done. To do 18 surgeries at one time is a lot. This is a failure of somebody from Texas. You can see there's a cut in the heel here, but the whole foot's just twisted around, you know. Sometimes the disease just doesn't play right with us, right? The muscles get weaker. But these are just post-operative results. That right foot looked like the left. This right foot on the right is only 2 weeks after surgery, and it looked like the left. No matter how poorly they do on this right foot, it's going to be exponentially better than having a foot like that. This boy had never walked. He's from Israel. He had never walked before. When I discharged him, he was walking with a walker. God bless him. I hope he's doing well. But he has to be doing better. This foot had surgery. Watch. That's better than any magic trick I can do. That foot has surgery. This one on the right's about to have surgery. And these are not just select patients. These are not like, okay, the 4 really good results that I've had. It's fairly typical of the majority, but not for everyone. All right, so you get the idea of that. Let's just go through this. Sarah was one of the most amazing. You may have seen her. She was 16. She couldn't walk. We operated on one foot. All she said she wanted to do was walk down the high school aisle without having to hold on to her father. I called her years later. I said, "How are you doing? What's going on with you?" And she said, "Dr. Pfeffer, you don't understand." She said, "I just walked 10 kilometers around London with my boyfriend in cute shoes." So that's a magic trick, all right. This gal, she said, "I don't want to wear braces. I've had surgery. I'm going to be the first woman president of the United States. I'm going off to college." Here she is, not too far after her surgery. I'm almost done here, Elizabeth, so I'll have time.
Oh, no, it's good. It's good.
There she is. I mean, I can't do that. Could she have? And she honestly, she said after, I don't know how she's doing now, Libby, but she texted me a while ago. She goes, "After 5 or 6 hours of walking around campus, I need a little toe-up brace, you know, when you go into your laces, because I get tired at the end of the day, and I sometimes need a little brace." That's better than I ever thought.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Sullivan. I have a daughter named Casey Sullivan, and she has Charcot-Marie-Tooth, CMT. And she, as a child, could not walk, and it got worse as she got older. She had reconstructive surgery by Dr. Pfeffer, and I want to let you guys know, to all the moms out there, that she is walking perfectly now. She has straight ankles, her feet are flat to the ground, her toes are straight.
We texted every night, literally every night. The daughter's nervous, which is okay, but so am I. Every single night I would get a text from her, "Dr. Pfeffer, am I doing this?" Probably, she could tell you, maybe for 4 months straight. But the final text I got, which was the best, she said, "I can walk on grass for the first time without tripping."
Hi, my name is Miriam. I'm here post-operatively, Dr. Pfeffer's office at Cedars. I'm looking at my foot and I'm happy with what I see. And I can't wait to be able to walk without using a brace, be able to not be afraid to get out of my car and walk down to the grocery store and pick up a gallon of milk and not have to worry about how I'm going to make it from, the parking lot inside the grocery.
I spoke to Miriam recently, and I'm always have some trepidation. How are you doing? And she's doing beautifully. Miriam, you're out there in the audience. God bless. And Katie, remember her? She just wanted to walk. Maybe 2 months ago, I got this text from her dad. And she said she's 1 year after her second foot surgery. I said, thanks, Doc. Okay, I think that may be enough.
It's beautiful.
So I'd encourage you to go to Instagram. I think I'd encourage you, of course, to work with the CMTA and all these organizations out there that help people with CMT. It can be so isolating. I didn't know anybody with my foot problem growing up. And I think the most amazing thing about it was this. Someone I've never met with CMT and from Hawaii. He'll never come for surgery. He doesn't need it. But that's what he wrote. And for me, that makes the Instagram all worth it. That's it, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. That was wonderful, Dr. Pfeffer. Just amazing.
Okay, good. Hi.
So,
it worked. I can't believe it.
Awesome. Good job.
Say.
It's unbelievable. It is like magic, and it's miraculous at the same time. And I know we have a lot of questions from our audience, but I just have a couple I'm going to get in right now. So I saw some of the feet in there. There were hammer toes, and I'm not sure if my vocabulary is right with the words, but like hammer toes and claw toes. Some of them you straightened, some of them were not straightened. And I'm wondering how you deal with toes.
Yeah, it's a great question. Very succinctly, toes are among the most difficult, actually, of surgery to do. And the longer people wait, I can still fix the rest of the foot, but the toes become more and more problematic. And there's no easy answer for that. Sometimes it's as simple as just transferring the tendon so the tendon, remember the overpull doesn't continue. Sometimes we just cut the flexor tendons, but I don't like to do that in someone who has a motor disease. And what I've been doing lately with severe problems is we actually have been fusing these joints. It's okay because the joint's useless. It's not doing anything for anyone except getting in the way. So we fuse the joints and leave the tendons alone. And we can have some beautiful results with that. The problem is it's a lot of surgery. That in and of itself, that operation could take an hour, hour and a half. And to add that onto a 4-hour operation, someone like the boy I'm operating on Monday who has all of that may have to come back. He may for the toe operation. It's just the way it is. But
all right, very good. I understand. So another question, one of my friends asked me, and she said, and I haven't heard this question beforehand. She said, how do you, after she had CMT surgery, the foot was perfect. And this is not someone that you saw yourself. It was someone else that did the surgery. But now her knee and hips are not aligned with her foot. And she's having gait problems and some knee and hip issues. And I'm wondering, is that because she waited too long and the CMT foot made her walk differently? Or do you do gait analysis beforehand? Have you heard of these problems?
That's the times that I've seen that have been times where I've heard about it, someone has foot surgery, they get deconditioned and the hip muscles, which are vulnerable to begin with, and the knee muscles get weaker, right? So they just get deconditioned. I know of one person in my career from Santa Barbara, and she had foot surgery. She was, recovering, and then she had that problem, and all of a sudden her hips started to have a problem. It's really, really rare. if the feet have been balanced properly. My first thought is that the surgery didn't work on the feet and that they're imbalanced. You know, if she just wants to send me an x-ray or a picture, I'd be glad to look at it. But the key is to stay conditioned, you know, after your surgery, even if you're in bed. Listen, as some of you may know, or maybe all of you, I just dislocated my ankle. It's the bum foot that never worked great. And I tripped, and it might have been more of an ankle sprain for somebody, but for me, it was a horrible fracture dislocation 4 months ago. And the key was to be in bed and just stay conditioned, get some 5-pound weights on my ankle and to be lifting it up. You don't want to, especially someone who's weak to begin with.
So is that why you don't usually do you usually do double surgeries at the same time? Do both feet at the same time? Or why?
Never. You can do double surgery in a 4-year-old like yesterday, where Dr. K did that, where you can just carry them around easily. But no, an adult is going to be completely impaired because they can't put any weight on their foot for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Somebody would have to be tiny, carry them around to the toilet, carry them to the chair. What weight would that be? I don't even know. You know, 50 pounds if dad's strong.
Yeah. Okay. And the last question I have, thank you for that, from a group of people said, let me see, what was the question? The age. There's not a specific age. Like if you have, when Johan was growing up, they're like, oh no, he's too young, you gotta wait till later. But then as we waited till later, like, why'd you wait so long? So there's not an age, but how do you know to bring your child to trust you with his feet or her feet? And when do you do it?
Well, it's absolutely the most important question anybody can ask, and I don't have an answer. I thought I had an answer to that a year ago, but I don't have an answer to that now. But I can give you as close as I can come to that. It depends on when the CMT starts, right? CMT that starts in young people, 4, 5, Johan, I forget how old he was, 6, 7. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of disease than people who really start to become impaired when they're 12, 13, 14. It's the same CMT, but perhaps it's more aggressive. Perhaps the genetic mutation is something we don't understand. But I would normally say operate on somebody absolutely as early as possible. But when you operate on these 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds or 10-year-olds, or just very immature feet, you know, they could still be 13 or 14, it's not as predictable. And as when I operate on someone who's a young adolescent. So the answer to your question is operate on somebody as soon as they can't walk and they have a foot that's crooked. The 4-year-old had feet like this. It was just a sad thing to watch that boy scamper around. He has to have surgery. He's unbraceable. So operate on the crooked foot at any age. Operate certainly on the young adolescent at 12 or 13. As soon as you know that person's not going to live with that foot, ideally for the rest of their life. If you look at your child, your friend, and you say, I don't want them to have that foot the rest of their life, that's the time to have surgery. The hard part, and I know Dr. Shai from the CMTA and all, has always considered this issue himself. What do you do with a borderline person, who's 7 or 8 or 9? And we don't have an answer for that question yet. But that's a very rare patient. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Most people are saying, I'm getting by, I'm doing okay. But now that I'm 13 or 14, I'm starting to trip. I can't keep up with my friends. So
the last question I have, thank you. That was very, very helpful.
Long answer, but so when
that was very helpful.
With the crooked foot at any age, the foot in the young adolescent, when you know they're not going to live with it the rest of their life, as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you. The last question is, since CMT is a progressive disease, do you do surgery and then 20 years later you have to do it again because the foot deforms, or what is your experience with that?
There's no literature on that whatsoever. The study that we started in 2017 will be coming to fruition soon. I told you, anyone have operated out there, please answer us when we write to you. And we'll follow these patients along forever. And the only way anyone will have an answer for that is in 2037, when those patients are still around. Many of them were young, and we're going to find out how they're doing. But I can tell you this: if anyone's considering surgery and they're not doing well, don't delay because someone tells you, you're just going to be paralyzed in 10 years anyway. That's not my experience. I've been operating for 30 years in California, and no one has ever come back to me and said, the operation hasn't worked because I've gotten weaker, ever. And I'm around, so I've never had that. So I don't think these things progress. And I personally think that when you do this on a young person, and this is really critical, what do you think happens? And we're doing a study on this. We've just started a fascinating 3-dimensional study with an engineering company in Finland. So look at what happens to bone when it has abnormal pull on it. So how many of you out there got CMT when you were 11? No, you had, but how many really presented with it? And you had a foot like this. What happens to the bone when it's having abnormal pull as you develop 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? No one really knows. And we're just actually starting a study to look at the abnormal shape differences that are occurring. So probably in those feet, if you correct the abnormal pull earlier, the bone deformity won't occur to the same degree. So we don't know the answer, though. It's interesting.
That's a great point. So we are 2 minutes before 2. We did start a little bit late. I would ask you to hang in there, and Dr. Pfeffer is willing to stay longer. And Laurel, I know we've received quite a few questions. So do you want to ask a couple more questions for our audience?
For me, I don't know how this works with you all, but I'm happy to stay as long as you need.
Oh, thank you.
It's 2 o'clock here. I told Mandy we go to dinner at 6. So
Okay.
the rest is up to you.
Well, we'll have to cut you off at some point, but we're so incredibly grateful for your time and sharing your talents with us, Dr. Pfeffer. So slightly related to the age again, someone asked, she said she always heard that you shouldn't operate on children until their bones are finished developing. Is that sort of an old school philosophy?
It's an old school philosophy. Just take it, throw it out the window.
Okay, and then we won't get to all of these questions necessarily, but a couple of people, I'm combining their questions. They feel they are not in an area where they would be able to find a CMT surgeon, a foot and ankle surgeon who really knows what they're doing on the CMT foot. And they're asking about surgery costs, like if they were to come to Los Angeles or go see a CMT foot and ankle orthopedic surgeon. Answer that.
Well, let me just talk about us, since I really don't know what goes on around the country. And that's, well, I mean, it's just simple. It's a hard discussion for me because I just like to take care of everyone. I just said to someone the other day, maybe I'll retire in 5 years and just travel around the world having CMT clinics operating on people who can't afford to do it. When I finished my residency, I joined Project Hope. After the invasion in Grenada, I was with Project Hope and I was the only orthopedic surgeon. But it's hard to do because of the follow-up, and maybe I'll do that. But the bottom line here is I want people to come here if they can. I'm not amazed, but I admire the COVID is not stopping anyone. Tomorrow there's a girl from Texas and she's driven up. There's a boy next week from New York and he's flying in, So it doesn't seem to stop anybody much for the CMT, and they think it's a good time, right? Because schools are virtual. So all of a sudden someone's saying, well, this is not worth it to be freshman in college for $70,000 a year. I'm gonna get my feet taken care of. People come, I want them to stay. A lot of surgeons wouldn't want that, but I want the person to stay here for 2 weeks. Now it's a big city and a lot of people have relatives. And I would say what I tell everyone: you can get a hotel out of town for $59 somewhere a week, and you can get a hotel in town for $5,900 a night. And I've had both types of patients, normally the former than the latter, but you'd stay. And then the sutures will come out in 2 weeks and then you go home. Insurance we've never been denied insurance because if you're in North Dakota, in your town, the insurance knows that there's nobody who's going to want to do this. And if they do want to do it, the patient will say, doctor, how many have you done? You know, have you done hundreds the way they have, hundreds of patients the way they have at Cedars? And nobody wants that. It's too difficult a surgery to take on, you know. So the surgeons don't want it. Even the HMOs will allow people that. One of those people I showed you was from an HMO, which is very restrictive healthcare, right, in Hawaii. But the HMO doctor doesn't want to do it. The Medicaid and the Medi-Cal patients aren't allowed to come. But almost all insurances will allow this. I'm an employee. I don't get a penny from doing the surgery, just not a penny. I'm an employee of Cedars, and Cedars is part of almost all plans. And the last thing I would just say is if somebody doesn't allow you to come at first, they will. Because all you have to do is say, this is where I want to go. Are you willing to take the responsibility, doctor, insurance plan, that I'm not going to do well? And the answer for that 99% of the times will be, why don't you go to Los Angeles? Now, there are certainly people who do what I do in the United States, but there are large areas where they're not.
Okay, that's a really helpful answer. Great to know.
And let me just say, the cash price is just insurmountable. It's tens and tens of thousands of dollars.
Sure. So you really need to go through insurance and get that. Does it require referral? So there's someone in Orange County who would like to come see you, obviously nearby.
It depends on their insurance. You know, we can talk about insurance and Democrats and Republicans and everyone should have health care and not have health care. You know, all I want though is one thing. I want everybody to be able to go to see the doctor they want and no insurance company to tell me what equipment that I can use on you. And if I want to use a screw that happens to cost a lot of money because it's the best screw there is, that's what I want to be able to use, you know? So in that regard, we've never had anyone turn down. Sal Rosette, my surgery scheduler, I was working late night in the office. He was leaving late. And I asked Sal about this. And he said to me, it's exactly what he said. I don't know if it's true or not. He said, Doc, he goes, we have no one ever is turned down by insurance for you. Each doctor has something called an NPI number that designates them. He said, the insurance company, I'm talking to them on the phone, and they say, well, what's his NPI number? And it's CMT. And he goes, the insurance just immediately says, oh yeah, you can go there. I don't know if he's just reading into that or not. I said, so they're tracking us with CMT and my doctor number? He goes, they must. Blue Cross, he said, I don't know if it's true, but according to him, he said, Blue Cross knows about you and CMT.
Wow.
Anyway, that's a long answer.
That's okay, very helpful. Back to the age a little bit, and I know you spoke to the crooked foot being, you know, a surgical possibility at any age. James is asking about, he just found out he has CMT and he's in his 60s. So if your foot gets really bad and you're in your 60s or late 50s or early 70s, whatever that later age range is, but you're a healthy person and you have a full life ahead of you, will you operate on that CMT foot to get that foot back in the right position?
I just operated on a gal from Poland who's 86. And I'm embarrassed or shocked. I don't know what I am, but say I even did that. But she said to me, doctor, I have no medications. I weigh 110 pounds. I walk around the world once a year. My mother lived to 110. I can't be in a brace. Either cut my foot off or make it flat. We did.
Wow. Okay. Good to know.
He's off back to Poland doing great.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, great. Someone wrote in and said, have you heard of the Jones procedure? Dr. Lawrence Rinsky, orthopedic surgeon at Stanford, did that on my son 28 years ago. He had severe CMT. Are you familiar with that procedure?
Yeah, the Jones procedure is a very common procedure. It's done when you have a toe that looks like this. You fuse this joint straight and you take the tendon and move it back. It's good, and 28 years ago it was state of the art, but there's much more to do now. And one of those research papers that I showed, we pushed that. We pushed it. We didn't do just a Jones on this toe, but we did it on all of them. And that gave incredible strength to the ankle. And that's what led to that procedure. It's called the HIBS, H-I-B-B-S. So Jones is just for the big toe, great operation, still done. But more typically, we do the Jones in conjunction with HIBS to transfer all of the tendons.
Okay,
I'm
fantastic.
going to ask you a question that we haven't, don't tell me no. I think I'm just going to ask it anyway. We haven't talked about fusion. I know that in Europe, if I'm correct, that they often do fusions just for CMT patients, but you don't do that many fusions. And can you tell me like, when should somebody consider an ankle fusion?
Yeah. Briefly, there was I'm not sure it's officially CMTA sponsored, but there was a consortium in Europe, which you know about. Dr. Shai was there and others, looking at this, the surgical issue. And we met, and I was amazed that one of the surgeons there who does a lot of CMT surgery said, we do fusions in everyone. We do tendon transfers and fusions. And I said, well, what about we do tendon transfers and fusions in everyone? I've had a fusion. So I was born with a fusion. You can do okay with a fusion of the joints that are usually involved with CMT, but you're not perfect. And if my foot moved perfectly, I would not have dislocated my ankle when I fell in the pool. So you don't want to do a fusion. You don't want to do a fusion in a young person. If you have to, it's not the end of the world, especially in somebody over 40. I've fused 13-year-olds, but not the ankle. Let me tell you, if anyone's telling you who has CMT that you need an ankle fusion, you need another opinion from out of town. It doesn't have to be from me. And the reason I say that is, and everyone remember this, it's kind of a funny, the only good opinion, second opinion, the only really good second opinion is from out of town. Or go to a doctor and don't tell them you've seen anyone else. If someone comes to me and they say, I've seen this doctor over here at this university, I'm in a bind. It's a little harder for me to say I completely disagree with that. I do, but it's harder. So just go to a doctor, say, hi, I'm here to see you, and don't tell them anything. Now, at the end, if you want to say, I've seen this doctor here, and he said this or she said that, that's good. Otherwise, go to the next city over and find an opinion, but never fuse an ankle in a CMT patient as a general rule. Why? Because you'll do much better with those braces. When you fuse the ankle, you take all the spring out of the ankle and you negate the ability of using those wonderful braces, those ground reaction force braces that are made now. And those braces are anything from over the counter, or basically online, to $10,000, $12,000 a pair. So there's a lot of options, but you have options unless you get your ankle fused.
Thank you.
Great information. I'm actually one of those people. I have CMT1A. I have no foot deformity, but just total foot drop. And I slapped on a pair of carbon fiber braces and they take me everywhere I need to go in life. I love them.
Absolutely. In some way, once someone gets over the issue that they're paralyzed below the knee, which is, that's the hard thing to grapple with. In some way, though, those are the best CMT patients, or at least among them, because your foot's flat and you can be in a brace.
Yeah.
It's not something anyone electively chooses if they could have surgery, especially when they're at 16.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. Okay, next question. So Joe asks, what do you do? And this is I know a tricky one. What do you do if you don't have that one strong muscle you need, for example, for the tendon transfer, and you don't want to wear braces? So you don't,
retire in Hawaii and sit on the beach, I guess, and swim. Yeah. It depends what you mean by that. If there's paralysis below the knee, well, there's no answer to that. What if you don't want to vote Republican? What if you don't want to vote Democrat? I guess you could vote independent, but it's going to be kind of a wasted vote this year, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So there's no answer to that. If somebody has paralysis, no, good answer. If someone has paralysis below the knee and they don't want to wear a brace, you know what I did? There's a Ducati motorcycle shop down the street. I don't really know what that is, but that's the motorcycle like that Tom Cruise drives, and what's that, Mission Impossible or James Bond or whatever he's in. And these motorcycle boots are incredibly tall and hip, and they cost well over, I think, I don't know what, $1,400. But I told this boy, he said, I don't want to do it. I said, get some motorcycle boots. And he comes back with these Ducati motorcycle boots. which he said was for every Christmas present for the next 10 years, and he was doing fine. But if your foot's not flat on the ground, you've got to straighten it out. Because if you're in your 50s or 60s, and you don't want to wear a brace, that's fine. Wear a motorcycle boot or a high top sneaker, but if your foot's not flat on the ground, by the time you're older, you're going to be an old man before your time.
Mm-hmm.
Trip and fracture your ankle before your time. And at some point, you're going to be too old to do the surgery. So that's the issue. Flat on the ground's fine with me. Let me just leave. I'm not hanging up here, but everyone, don't live with a crooked foot that's not flat on the ground.
Yeah, the long-term
And I
repercussions.
have no stock investment with Ducati or anything.
Okay, so someone's asking if surgery similar to what you've talked about has been done and then the foot goes back to that typical CMT foot, is there any chance a second surgery would work?
Yes, absolutely. I do quite a few revision surgeries.
Okay.
And it depends why it went back. But a lot of this, the COVID has been a tragedy, of course. But one really good thing that's come out of it is an acceleration of telemedicine. And if somebody wants, you can call my office. You can find me. I'm not hard to find, but it's Cedars-Sinai. And you can get my assistant. You can say, I'd like to sign up for a telemedicine visit. And I'll get your videos. I can look at your foot. Your insurance will be charged, which, it's hard if I have 50 people wanting to do this. I just can't do them all, on my Saturday evenings off. And it's really cool, though. We couldn't do this, back in February, but now it's legal, it's HIPAA compliant. So I would encourage anyone who wants an opinion like this to do that. My assistant, her name is Sue Muse, M-U-S-E. You can do it. You get to Cedars, M-U-S-E, and we'll set up an appointment for you, and we'll do it just like we're doing here. And I can accomplish a lot that way.
Dr. Pfeffer, thank you. Dr. Pfeffer, there are so many people out there in the country that need CMT surgeries and are not able to go to LA to see you for whatever reason, financial or the time or whatever. Are you doing anything to train? So Janet asked this question. I've had somebody else ask me, are you training other doctors to do what you do? Is that possible? And is there a training program you can set up in your free time?
Well, but let me make it really clear. There orthopedic foot and ankle specialists. That's who you want to see, an orthopedic MD foot and ankle specialist. MD, someone who went to medical school. That's the first thing.
Not a podiatrist.
You can listen, if there's a podiatrist out there who's done 100 CMT surgeries, then fine. I have no problem with that. Podiatrists are not medical doctors. There's some natural competition between orthopedic surgeons and podiatrists. It's like the Rams and the Jets and the Mets and all this kind of stuff, Yankees and Mets. But I train podiatrists here at Cedars. But they do what they can do when they finish. So anyway, my advice is to go to anyone who does a lot of CMT surgery, but it's hard. It's hard to know. If I want to find out how many members truly are a member of the CMTA, I bet with just a little tiny bit of research, I could find out how many members you have. Try to find out how many people I've operated on with CMT. It's unpenetrable because there are national laws against it. So I could tell you, I've operated on always over 40,000 people with CMT.
Wow.
You wouldn't know. There's no way. So you have to just try to sort that out. But look for an orthopedic foot and ankle specialist. That's the place to start. In this one, you need somebody with gray hair. I am so much better at this than I was 15 years ago. I'm not sure I'm the best anymore at 3 in the morning putting a smashed ankle together, with blood coming out of the wound from a truck injury. But you need to find somebody, in my suggestion, who's over the age of, probably 55, because you need experience with CMT. And unless someone, and for me, this is all I want to do, really. I'm happy. I take care of all sorts of other patients, but I don't know that's my credential. That's why I'm good, because I don't know that there's another surgeon on the face of the planet, orthopedic foot and ankle specialist, who says, "Well, I really would like to do a CMT surgery." So I guess that's what separates me from a lot of people. But there are good doctors out there. Go see somebody. Contact me if you want. Set up a telemedicine visit, and I'll tell you whether I agree with their opinion or not. And I know everybody, and I'll tell you I'll secretly tell you if I think it's a good person to go with.
And also, I think the consensus paper that you and your colleagues put together helps with, you know, if somebody finds somebody that's good in CMT, just helps understand what the best surgeons in the world are doing. Is that true?
There's no question. That paper, I mean, what you did for CMT patients, you also indirectly did for me. And I can't thank you guys enough, because without your support, that financial support and fire in your belly support, that never would have happened. It was a remarkable thing you did. And I know the mission of the CMTA is to find a cure, not to cater to surgeons and not to have a think tank that probably cost you tens of thousands of dollars. But I can't thank you enough just personally, because that paper that we just published just a few weeks ago is absolutely the highlight of my career. And I never in my life thought I would accomplish that.
Well, I thank you.
Take that paper, put it in your pocket, bring it to your surgeon, learn it. CMT patients are pretty smart people, and learn what's in that paper, ask a few questions, and see what the answers are. What we wrote in that consensus patient paper will change, and it's not the final answer, but it's a very good start to knowing who the right surgeon is for you.
Right, and everybody has a link to that in the follow-up emails that we sent to you. And if you still don't know where that is, let us know. We'll send it to you again, and it's on the CMT website. Go ahead, Laurel.
Absolutely. So we did have a really interesting question, Dr. Pfeffer. As the hands start to atrophy, can you take that same tendon transfer concept and apply it to hand surgery to bring that strength or mobility back to the hand?
Yes, but very rarely done, because what's happening in the hand is this puffy muscle here, the intrinsic muscle, is what's going. Why don't you all just take your thumb and finger and sort of pinch it together and see if, I have a very pronounced muscle, but see if that muscle, yeah, there you go. You can see that Laurel's atrophy. But that doesn't stop her from opposing her thumb. Can you do that, Laurel? Bring it over to your small finger. Yeah, and this is the kind of thing the hand really has to do. This is what separates us from the monkeys and the chimps, that we can oppose. So normally the surgery is not needed. Even though the grip becomes weak like this, taking off a bottle tap could be difficult. There are ways around that. But yes, you know, go to a university, very specialized hand person, but I hardly see anyone that has tendon transfers in the hand for CMT.
Okay. I'm just checking the last couple questions. So many people saying thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Pfeffer, for your time, for the information. I think this has been asked, but if people want to see you, we can send another follow-up email with Dr. Pfeffer's office information and appointment line. So I'm happy to send that out to everyone. We are also recording this, as you all know, and once we have added the subtitles, so for people who had sound trouble, we'll add the subtitles. We will also send this out to everyone who registered today. And I think we've covered the vast majority of questions. I'm just rolling through chat. Elizabeth, I don't know if you can think of anything else or see anything that I didn't see.
No, I think that was pretty well covered. Is there anything else, Dr. Pfeffer, that you think is important for our community to know here today?
You know, I just want to say one last time that I am not the only person in the United States who does this. I may not even be the best person in the United States, but nobody knows the answer to that. So you'll have orthopedic, MD, foot and ankle surgeons in your community who do this work. And you can be very forthright with them. You just say, listen, I have family in LA, or I'm thinking of going to LA, and you know, Dr. Pfeffer has done hundreds of these surgeries. And, you know, can you take care of me? They're going to say, I'll tell you the truth. People, you know, orthopedic foot and ankle people, orthopedists, they're a pretty straightforward bunch. So there will be people around the country who do a lot of it. The problem for me is I don't really know who they are. When you look at the people we had at the think tank, they're brilliant people. They're some of the smartest people on the planet, the best and the brightest. But some of them actually don't do that much CMT surgery. You know, one of them did surprisingly little, but he was still a great asset because of his terrific mind. Some of them are retiring, you know. So I just don't want anyone to think for a second that, you know, I'm the only guy around. But I do want you to think that I'm happy to see in a consultation, if nothing else. Video chat's not as good as in person. And the gal from Texas tomorrow, she drove here because of COVID. She had one foot done. She's so happy with it. And she was here for the other foot. And that was 3 weeks ago. And they tested her at Cedars and she tested COVID positive. And she wasn't sick. She just tested COVID positive. And so the protocol is you can't operate on that person for 2 weeks. So she and her mom got in the car, drove back to Texas. This weekend they're driving back to Cedars and we'll operate on her and we'll give her a matching pair. So, you know, if she could do that, many of you can too.
I can't thank you for being so passionate about our cause. And you're very approachable. And usually in the world of orthopedic surgeons, I mean, you guys are very, very busy and very task-oriented, but you care. You have heart, you have soul, you follow up with your patients. I mean, the quality of care that you give is amazing. So not only are you a very competent surgeon, but also you're somebody that's approachable and you can talk to and you're interesting. And so A+, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and caring about our community.
Hi, everybody.
It's
Stay
been
safe.
incredible.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming on.
Bye.
Yep. And I just wanted to add, if you have any questions that went unanswered, please send me an email. Everyone has my email, laurel@cmtausa.org, and send your question and we'll get it over to Dr. Pfeffer. We'll get that answered for you. And thanks for sharing your time with us today, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pfeffer.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Take care. Bye-bye.